the presence of a quorum.
Councillor Campbell. Here. Councillor Edwards. Councillor Sabi George. No, she's here. Councillor Sabi George. Councillor Flaherty. Councillor Flynn. Here. Councillor Janey.
Present.
Councillor Mejia. Councillor O'Malley.
Present.
And Councillor Wu.
Thank you so much.
We have a quorum.
Wonderful. I've been informed by the clerk that a quorum is present. At this time, I would ask all councilors and guests to please rise. Councilor Sabi George will introduce our clergy of the day. And after we have the invocation, we will go straight to the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Councilor Sabi George.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm so happy to welcome Reverend Willie Bodrick here today to offer us a prayer, especially as we celebrate Black History Month. Reverend Willie Broderick II is from the historic 12th Baptist Church in Roxbury, the same place where Dr. Martin Luther King had served as pastor. Like Dr. Reverend King, Reverend Bodrick has been a tireless advocate for communities of color here in the city of Boston. He has used his ministry to lift up the voices for those who are too often left behind in our political process, especially our young people. In addition to serving as a mentor, I have seen firsthand his dedication to empowering our youth through his efforts as chair of the Network for Black Student Achievement, where he fights every day to address the systemic inequities in our schools. As a former educator, parent, and city councilor, I am grateful for his commitment to the future of Boston and for his leadership in our city. I'm so also excited to have him here to welcome us in prayer because he, I think, embodies, and those of us who have known him over the years know that he embodies a true welcoming spirit. Reverend.
Madam President, Councilor Sabi George, to the council here today, let us bow for our invocation. O liberty, thou golden prize, so often sought by blood, we crave thy sacred sun to rise, the gift of nature's God. Most gracious and almighty, we come to you on this day, thanking you for life, for health, and for strength. God, we ask that your blessings be upon the women and men that are on this council who have been chosen to lead this city at this appointed time. God, as so much is happening in this great city of Boston, I pray that this council continues to acknowledge their great responsibility and each and every day serve the constituents of our communities equitably. But God, even as we are dealing with all that we are dealing, God, let us be ever so reminded that there is so much work to do. God, there's still opportunity and achievement gaps in our school systems. God, there's still so many brothers and sisters that are on Melnil Cass struggling with an opioid addiction. God, there's a housing crisis in our city that needs to be addressed. God, there are still so many cut from opportunities each and every day. And we still have to deal with the demons of racism, classism, sexism, and homophobia, even in our progressive communities. But God, I still believe there's hope, because you have placed this council in this city at this appointed time with all their talents and all the intellectual capacities to serve your people. And so my prayer is that you grant this council wisdom, grant them courage, and grant them a commitment and will to do that which is right and good. And God, I pray that they hear your people and that they listen to your people and fight on behalf of your people in your spirit of love, justice, and peace, so that all of God's children can sing in that spirit of liberation the hymn of my ancestors. Lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise, high as the listening skies, and let it resound loud as the rolling seas. This is our prayer, and we give you this meeting in the name of all that we hold holy and sacred, in whom I call Jesus Christ, Let every heart and mind say, amen.
Thank you so much, Reverend Broderick. At this time, we have a special presentation, and I want to invite Councilor Baker up. Thank you, Councilor Baker. Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to invite Joni Pierce down here with us. Joni and my good colleague Dan Hunt, and also Joni's son, to come on up. And if anybody else wants to come up, Jim, you want to come up? Whoever else wants to come up. Come on, Jim. Today it's my pleasure to honor someone here who's been working for the city for 29 plus years. Joni's been working for the city of Boston in a number of different capacities for 29 years. She's worked at the Murphy Community Center, for Boston Public Schools, as Maureen Feeney, Councilor Maureen Feeney at the time, her elderly liaison, and she currently works at DeWitt, where she has been there for the last 14 years. Joni grew up in South Boston, which we won't hold against you, Joni. But has lived in Dorchester, similar to my wife, has lived in Dorchester longer than she lived in South Boston. She's married to her husband, Jim, and Joni has two sons, Sean and Jim, and the daughter-in-law, Missy, and the granddaughter, Tegan. Hi, Tegan. How are you? Joni exemplifies what it means to be a public servant, as you can tell by the support she has from people that work with her in the office. And it was the people that work in the office that approached us to make sure that Joni got her due. One of the founding principles of our democracy is pluralism. Pluralism is the ability of groups to gather together and form and solve problems. The reason why I mentioned this the first time I met Joni was at we were putting on a fundraiser for John Haggerty. John Haggerty was the first person that died in the Big Dig. And like a good Boston community, the people in Dorchester coalesced around this family. I had John's children at the Little House when I was volunteering up there. And at that meeting, it was my first foray into something that was different than just a political campaign. This was families getting together to help a family that was in need. And one of the people that I met there was Joni. And I was able to learn how to give to families other than just political. I need your vote, I want your vote. This was a way for me to kind of come into myself. I was about 25 years old, I think, and the people that I met in that room, Joni and Jim were there. They were, when I first ran for office, about 15 of the phone conversations were people like Joni and other people that I met in that room. There was a future mayor was in that room, a future city council two future city councils were in that room, and also our state senator at the time who became our congressman. It showed me about the beauty of the people of Boston. When there's a problem, we get together and we fix it. So for things like that, Joni, for just being there for my community, being there for your family, and for being one of the nicest people that I know, and it's an honor to consider you and Jim as my friends. I love you. Your office loves you. And also, so we have a Revere Bowl. The last time I saw a regular city employee get a Revere Bowl, excuse me, sorry, Keegan, it was at the print department, and the guy we gave the Revere Bowl to was there for 55 years. He got a Revere Bowl. We're giving Joni hers after 29 years. You don't have to open that, Joni, but there it is. Love you. And I would like my good colleague Dan to get up and say a couple words. Thank you.
I'm generally an emotional person, so I hope I get through this. But also, Sean and I went to school with Bridget Haggerty, who's dead. My name's Dan Hunt. I'm a state representative from Dorchester, but like many people from many of the strong communities, we have many mothers. Deval Patrick used to always say that there was the older person down the street that would look after the whole street. And we had, we had,
Son, it's okay.
we were fortunate to have a lot of those, and I was. And Joan Pierce has many titles, has been here for a long time. But I call her one of my moms, and I know that her favorite titles are mom and now grandma. So we appreciate the work that you've done, not only here at City Hall, but in many capacities in Dorchester, volunteering in a number of different ways. Lunch mom, soccer coach, deliver of the halves of oranges and the granola bars, which is the only reason that I played soccer. Driving us all to school, we used to pile at least 15 people into, like, what was a Ford Escort or something at the time. Toyota Corolla. It was small, but we were too.
It ran out of gas.
So very happy for you, Joni, and it's ridiculous, but you look younger now than you did 25 years ago. I feel like I look very old. So on behalf of myself, the House, the Dorchester delegation, a grateful city, thank you for your service, and this is a citation for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm speechless, which no one would believe, right? Right, teen? I did have a few words, but I do want to say I forgot the story of how we met Frank. And I would like to remember John Haggerty and his family. But here's what I wrote today. Thank you, Councilor Baker, Madam Councilor, my fellow councilors, my fellow colleagues, my family. I accept this offer of the Oscar humbly. Seriously, though, as this day approached, many people called me and said, blah, 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 I remember when you were a brunette, blah, 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 I remember when you didn't wear glasses. But one thing that always came through, we made it fun. Remember, we spend more time with our colleagues than we do our own family. Make the most of your work environment. Work smart, work hard, and most of all, have fun. A heartfelt thank you to all my colleagues, family, and friends for getting me to the status of permanently on vacation. I couldn't have achieved this without you cheering me every bit of the way. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to invite my colleagues up to take a photo.
Oh. Thank you. I had you in my... Is missing? Is missing? Where's missing? Ooh. Is Missy here? No Missy? Come on, boss. True. Oh, Missy's supposed to be up here.
One more with Missy, one more. Come on, Missy.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Anissa. Thank you. Huh?
Madam Clerk? We're going to amend the attendance. Madam Clerk, if you could please amend the attendance report to include Counselor Flaherty. I think that's everyone.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Now we will move on to the first order of business, starting with the approval of the minutes. If there are no corrections to be made, the minutes of the last meeting will stand approved. Seeing and hearing no objections, the minutes stand approved. We'll move on now to communications from His Honor the Mayor. Madam Clerk, if you could please read docket 0363.
Docket 0363, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend a grant from the Massachusetts Department of Transportation in an amount not to exceed $4 million for the design and engineering services related to the North Washington Street Bridge project.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Docket 0363 will be referred to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Madam Clerk, if you could please read docket 0364.
Docket 0364, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend a grant from NSTAR Electric Company, DBA Eversource Energy, in an amount not to exceed $3,860,000 for costs related to construction on the North Washington Street Bridge.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Docket 0364 will be referred to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Moving on to docket 0365.
Docket 0365, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend a grant from the Boston Gas Company, DBA National Grid, in an amount not to exceed $2,890,000 for costs related to construction on the North Washington Street Bridge.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Docket 0365 will be referred to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Could you please read docket 0366?
Thank you. Docket 0366, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $31,315 in the form of a grant for the training and continuing education for forensic examiners, criminalists, and laboratory personnel awarded by the National Institute of Justice, passed to the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory, to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund the FY19 Paul Coverdell Forensic Science Improvement Formula Grant.
Thank you. The Chair recognizes Councilor Campbell. Councilor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a straightforward grant. I ask as Chair of the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice that we suspend the rules and pass docket 0366 in the amount of $31,315. We have received this in the past. If anything, the department always looks for more resources for training and continuing education for their forensic staff. At this time, I ask for suspension of the rules and passage. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Councilor Campbell seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0366. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0366 has been passed. Madam Clerk, if you could please read dockets 0367 through 0369. We read those together.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0367, message and order for the confirmation of the appointment of Brian Hone as a member of the Boston Arts Commission for a term expiring August 1st, 2024. Docket number 0368, message and order for the confirmation of the appointment of John Andrus as a member of the Boston Arts Commission for a term expiring January 1st, 2025. And docket number 0369, message and order for the confirmation of the appointment of Dr. Kimberly Pinder as a member of the Boston Arts Commission for a term expiring March 1st, 2024.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Dockets 0367 through 0369 will be referred to the Committee on Arts, Culture, Tourism, and Special Events. Now we will move on to reports of public officers and others. Madam Clerk, if you could please read docket 0370 through docket 0375 together.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0370, notice was received from the mayor of the reappointment of Elisa Birdseye as an Associate Commissioner to the Parks and Recreation Department for a term expiring January 1st, 2024. Docket number 0371, notice was received from the mayor of the reappointment of Marsha Innes Mitchell as a member to the City of Boston Scholarship Fund Committee for a term expiring August 1st, 2022. And docket number 0372, notice was received from the mayor of the reappointment of Adisurva Igbenawika as a member of the City of Boston Scholarship Fund Committee for a term expiring January 1st, 2020. Docket number 0373, notice was received from the mayor of the reappointment of Benjamin Vanier as a member of the City of Boston Scholarship Fund Committee for a term expiring August 1st, 2022. Docket number 0374, notice was received from the mayor of the reappointment of Brooke Woodson as a member to the City of Boston Scholarship Fund Committee for a term expiring August 1st, 2022. And docket number 0375, notice is received from the mayor of his absence from the city from 11 o'clock a.m. on Saturday, February 8th, 2020, until 8:30 p.m. on Saturday, February 15th, 2020.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Dockets 0370 through 0375 will be placed on file. We will now move on to matters recently heard for possible action. Madam Clerk, if you could please read docket 0245.
Docket 0245, ordinance amending Chapter 2-15.3 of the City of Boston Code Ordinances regarding lobbyist registration and regulation.
Thank you. Ready? The chair recognizes Councilor Edwards.
Thank you very much, Madam President. The Committee on Government Ops held a working session on Monday, February 10th on docket 0245. This is a docket number introduced by Councilor Baker. Specifically, the working session was attended by the majority of the City Council, including Councilors Bach, Braden, Mejia, Councilor, of course, Baker as the lead sponsor, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Flynn, and, of course, myself as the chair. We also in attendance was the city clerk, Darcy Beecham of IT, the IT operations manager for the city clerk's office, David Eggles, chief of the Department of Innovation and Technology. This ordinance makes a targeted edit to the lobbyist registration and regulation ordinance. Specifically, the language deletes a phrase that requires a notice of termination. This language is creating confusion about reporting requirements and placing significant burden on the clerk's office. The language does not result in an additional in any lack of information being reported to the public, and it does not result in any lack of transparency to the public, which are both the mission and the heart of the lobbyist registration ordinance. Lobbyists are still required to register on December 20th of each year if they intend to lobby in the following year. Lobbyists are also required to file reports each quarter, which are necessary even if a lobbyist has ended their service midway through the year. If a lobbyist has no activities to report, that will be evident from the reports themselves. If a lobbyist does not re-register at the end of the year, their status will be made inactive. During the working session, the participants discussed a number of other issues, including how to interpret existing exemptions, the inclusion or exclusion of attorneys representing clients, and the frequency of reporting. For the benefit of this council, I wanted to offer a brief note of clarification. The lobbyist registration ordinance resulted from multiple filings from the council and the mayor in 2017 and 18, a mayoral veto, and revisions and an eventual compromise. The actual language the council is amending today, or that I recommend the council amend today, originated from the mayor's ordinance in 2018, and my hope is that we can make this change with mutual agreement that the language is superfluous. I wanted also to advise my colleagues and members of the public that the Municipal Lobbying Compliance Commission also recently published regulations to implement the ordinance, which are visible online and open for comment until this Friday, February 14th. So further changes may be desirable in the future, but today the committee is recommending that the ordinance or the amendment ought to pass as filed. addressing this language will eliminate the need for unnecessary manual filings and fix a technical glitch. I wanted to also thank the clerk and her office for coming to testify specifically, not only about this particular amendment, but also on the day-to-day and how they are doing their very best, and in the last 6 months have done their very best, oftentimes alone, to try and interpret this law and also implement it to its fullest spirit and within the mission. I want to thank my colleagues again for attending, and that is my recommendation that we pass.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Baker. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank the chair, thank you, the chair for the quick turnaround on that. Thank you very much. It's appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else looking to speak? Wonderful. Yes. The chair recognizes Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President, and I also want to thank the chair for her work on this and the administration as well. I also wanted to highlight the tremendous work of the city clerk's office and what they're doing on this proposal as well. I also wanted to let my colleagues know that I was concerned when we do enact a provision such as this, or support a provision such as this. I do think it's also important, especially now during budget season, that we advocate effectively and aggressively to make sure that there is funds in the budget for staff that are able to comply with these added mandates. So I think that's also part of the discussion that we need to have as we go forward, making sure that there's money in the extra money in the budget for the clerk's office so that they can carry out their duties effectively. I know they're doing a tremendous job, but they do need staff, and it's our responsibility to effectively advocate for them to make sure that this is a success. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Councilor Flynn. Anyone else looking to speak? Councilor Edwards.
And my further I've left out the Vice Chair of Government Ops, Councilor Flaherty, was also there providing a great deal of historic knowledge about the passage. Thank you very much. Sorry about that.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Wonderful. Councilor Edwards seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 0245. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Docket 0245 has been passed. Madam Clerk, if you could please read docket 0246.
Docket 0246, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to submit, to the Massachusetts School Building Authority, MSBA, statement of interest for the Accelerated Repair Program for the following schools: Samuel Adams Elementary, Boston Day and Evening Academy, Curtis Guild Elementary, Nathan Hale Elementary, Dr. William W. Henderson Inclusion Upper School, Rafael Hernandez, K through 8, Lewis Henderson, K through 8, Patrick Kennedy Elementary, William H. Orenberger, K through 8, James Otis Elementary, and John Winthrop Elementary.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The chair recognizes Councilor Bach, Chair of the Committee on Ways and Means. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. The Committee on Ways and Means held a public hearing on this docket, 0246, yesterday, February 11th at 11:30. I was joined by Councilor Mejia, Councilor Flynn, and Councilor O'Malley. This, as is discussed in the committee report that you should have in front of you, it's a bid by us to ask the state to help pay for roof, window, and boiler repairs at certain schools. We've been very successful over the past few years as a city in getting that state assistance. And we heard from public facilities and some of the BPS officials about these schools and sort of how they do the prioritization and how these ended up being the ones that are moving forward. And I think the hope is very much to get the maximum state assistance with this because we have so many old school buildings in the district. So it was a positive hearing. There is a deadline for this request to go to the MSBA by this Friday. So I'm reporting this out and recommending passage.
Thank you so much. Councilor Bach seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 0246. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Docket 0246 has been passed. We will now move on to motions, orders, and resolutions. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0376?
Thank you, Madam President. 0376, Council Braden offered the following order for hearing regarding housing affordability and availability for families.
Thank you. Councilor Braden, you now have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, colleagues. I'm an immigrant. I'm a proud member of the LGBT community. I'm a healthcare professional and a 20-year community activist in Allston Brighton. I talk a great deal about community. The concept underpins my activism. Community, our common unity that binds us together, that supports us, that makes us, our city, stronger, more resilient, inclusive, and sustainable. I ran for office to represent Allston Brighton because I share your vision for our beautiful city, a city that lifts people up, an inclusive, resilient, culturally and economically diverse community that works together for the common good. Our city is a work in progress, and there is so much to do. I am here to work with you, my colleagues, our neighbours, our institutions, our community organisations to achieve that vision. I love Boston. We are a city of immigrants, a city of migrants and dreamers who come to Boston to make a new life for themselves and for our families. And we are a city with a long history of struggle for justice and freedom. This is the birthplace of the American Revolution. We established the first public schools and the first public library in the United States. And Boston was a hotbed of activism to abolish slavery, for women's suffrage, and more recently for equal marriage rights. And here we stand at the dawn of a new decade in which so many things seem possible in the fields of technology and science. Our numerous educational institutions and medical centres lead the world. It seems like we're in a golden age of opportunity. Our skyline is transformed by unprecedented new construction, businesses booming. But this is not a tide that lifts all the boats, especially boats with families in them. We are experiencing a widening wealth gap, widening educational attainment gap, and we're witnessing the displacement of working families who have lived in our city for generations. For decades, citizen activists have raised the alarm about the need to attract and retain families in Allston Brighton. 15 years ago, this issue was the driving force to establish the Presentation School Community Centre in Oak Square and the campaign to save the Faneuil Branch Library from closure. Those grassroots campaigns were shining examples of how a diverse, multi-generational community came together to fight for the public good that would strengthen and sustain our neighbourhood. Housing that is affordable for low and middle income earners is a citywide issue. But let me give you a flavour of what we're experiencing in Allston Brighton. We have a diverse neighbourhood with a population of over 70,000 people, 16% of the population of Boston. Our community has been impacted by unbridled development and untethered speculative investment, which is incentivised by a lax enforcement of zoning policy and the lack of a comprehensive planning approach. It is of great concern that we are not building housing that is affordable or meets the needs of our families. We are building thousands of new units in Allston Brighton, but most are unaffordable and inappropriate for our families. In 2016, a household earning a median income would have to pay 63% of its income to rent a 3-bedroom apartment in Allston Brighton. Allston Brighton has witnessed all this development, but recent figures confirm the fact that we are just not building enough for families. Of the 2,100 recently completed or approved units, 62% were studios and 1 bedrooms, 31% were 2 bedrooms, but only 7% of them were 3-bedroom units. I'm sorry, but you can't raise a family in a studio apartment. The displacement of families from our community breaks my heart, and every year our local childcare providers report that more families have left. There are many factors that contribute to this housing crisis for families in Boston. Boston has 148,000 students enrolled in our universities, of which 45,000 live off campus and in our neighbourhoods, especially Allston Brighton, which bears the brunt of it, with Boston University, Boston College and Harvard located in my district alone. Our owner occupancy rate in Allston is below 10%, and in Brighton it has fallen to 23% recently. Young professionals and families who want to put down roots and stay in the neighbourhood are being priced out by investors and speculators who purchase family homes for cash. Those former family homes become rental properties for groups of students or roommates who together can afford much higher rents than a family can. To afford the median income of $2,800 for a 3-bedroom, a family in Allston Brighton would need to be earning $110,000 to avoid being rent burdened. The theory that the young professionals will rent the newly built studios and 1-bedrooms with all their wonderful amenities in the neighbourhood, thus leaving room for families, is just not happening. Many choose to continue to live in our older housing stock with roommates simply because that's what they can afford. And new studios and 1-bedrooms are simply not affordable for most of the young people who live in the neighbourhood, where the median income in Allston is $26,000 and in Brighton is $58,000. We're not building for our middle-income workers who work in our hospitals, our universities and businesses, our social workers, our teachers, bus drivers, or our city employees. Crossing our fingers and hoping that this wave of new construction will entice more young people to move out of the 2- and 3-family rentals and leave them available for families is just wishful thinking. We are a city of neighbourhoods, each with its own rich history and unique characteristics. But what do we want our city to look like in the future? And who are we building for right now? Boston needs to be a city with a place for everyone. Our retirees who have lived and worked in the city, young people who are born and raised in the neighbourhoods but can't afford to stay, young families who come to Boston and want to put down roots here. As we build the Boston of the future, we need to build housing for families in all their forms. Our intergenerational families, our single-parent families, our families with a disabled child or a disabled parent, for grandparents raising grandchildren. Who are we building for? Our current trajectory sends a message: no families wanted. Is that how we want Boston to be? This is a very complex issue with many contributing factors, not just housing, and there are no simple answers, which is why I'm calling for a hearing to investigate affordability and availability of housing for families. I call on my colleagues and the administration and all of Boston to work together to keep families in our great city. And that's why I'm here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor Braden. Anyone else looking to speak or add their name may do so at this time. Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Baker, Councilor Bach, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, and also please add the chair. Docket 0376. Flaherty? Asabi George? Did you want to speak? Oh, okay, sure.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to rise to congratulate Councilor Braden on her first speech today and so appreciate her focus on families in our city, because as Councilor Braden knows, it certainly very directly impacts the families in Allston and Brighton, but this is a citywide crisis or a statewide crisis. And to know that her attention and her passion for this work is is the start of her work here on the council is really, I think, very special and very encouraging. And as a body, I'm so excited to have you on board and to have this be a big part of your focus. And I look forward to the work ahead, and welcome to the Boston City Council.
Thank you. Anyone else looking to speak? Wonderful. Docket 0376 will be referred to the Committee of Housing and Community Development. Before we move on, I want to recognize that we are joined by former Councilor Tito Jackson. Thank you for being here. Wonderful. Moving on to docket 0377. Madam Clerk, if you could please read it.
Docket 0377. Councilor Flynn offered the following order for hearing to discuss Boston's electoral recount process.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The chair recognizes Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, may I add Councilor Mejia as an original co-sponsor to the hearing?
Yes. Any objections? Any objections to adding her as an original?
Yes, sir. A point of order, Madam President.
Yes.
When a member, according to rules that we voted on several weeks ago, if a member is not present, we cannot add that member.
Wonderful.
I can withdraw that member.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Council President. Voting is a fundamental part of our democracy. Every vote is important. In competitive races, the margin of victory can be small. We saw that recently on the City Council at-large election last year, a real example of how every single vote counts. In an election like this, we should have a recount process in place that is fair to both the candidate and to the city. And before I continue, I want to recognize the tremendous work of the City of Boston Election Department that really were very professional, outstanding, worked well with both teams, were real credit to the city. The current recount process in Boston requires that candidates requesting a recount collect 50 signatures in each ward that they would like a recount on, and have the signatures certified and filed within 10 days of the petition. This process can be challenging to candidates, especially after a very difficult campaign. We have the responsibility to provide an accurate count of the votes, and having a cumbersome recount process can make it difficult to get that accurate recount. We should at least have a discussion on how we can improve the recount process, including having an automatic recount if the margin is below a certain threshold. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Anyone else looking to speak or add their name? The chair do you want to speak? The chair recognizes Councilor Edwards. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to the sponsor, the lead sponsor, Councilor Flynn, for your leadership, and I think was a well-deserved conversation that we do need to assess how we do a recount in the city of Boston. It's probably a once-in-a-generational thing that's going to happen, but we need to make sure that we can demonstrate to the future generations and future colleagues that we did learn from this moment. Not only was it another taxing to put on the individuals to come out there and go get signatures and I think added more to some of the tension that folks wanted to let go after that election, but also it added to a lot of the costs and the burdens and having to raise money and folks feeling that they needed an armaments race in order to get the right kind of attorney, and whether you got the attorney, and raising the money in order to have legal counsel to represent you, with the goal of, for some people, knocking down other people's votes, instead of really just pushing forward and really just being able to see the results as they were. So I would add not only to that conversation, we need to think about an automatic recount, but also thinking about what funds we will put to that automatic recount, including legal counsel that's neutral, so that if a campaign or a candidate cannot afford counsel or cannot raise additional money after a long campaign, that they do not feel that they're shortchanged. So I wanted to say that and certainly add my name. Thank you, Madam
I will
President.
add your name. The chair recognizes Councilor Bach. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just also wanted to commend the maker and to say, I think in addition to the question of how many signatures, the duplication of effort that was involved, where every candidate who has interest in a recount needed to gather signatures independently, sort of was a strange quirk, and raised the question of, well, if someone didn't, would they really not have representation in the room? I mean, I think when we're recounting an election, we should be recounting it on behalf of all parties. And I also think that looking for ways to do recounts that are going to, as much as possible, go across the board, rather than kind of selectively recounting only parts of an election. When you think about, with a recount, how important it is for the public to see it as a process with integrity, I think we've recently seen on the national level how that can be challenging when there's not good communication about it. And I just think thinking about how do we have as transparent and simple of a process as possible. I certainly bopped around the wards that I represent, gathering signatures for both sides in the recent recount, and really thought a lot about the fact that, you know, the ease of doing that depended a lot on, was there a big meeting scheduled in that 10-day period, right? Like where you could get a lot of voters, because you have to do these petitions ward by ward. So I think it's a large hill that we ask people to climb right now on it, and we should think about ways to simplify that. So very much commend the maker and wish to add my name.
Okay, wonderful. We'll add your name. Anyone else looking to speak? Add their name. Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Baker. We already have Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, Councilor Campbell. We have Councilor Edwards, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, and please also add the chair. Docket 0377 will be referred to the Committee on Civil Rights. I have been informed by the clerk that dockets 0378 through 0388 have been withdrawn. Moving on to docket 0389. Madam Clerk, if you could please read the docket.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0389, Councilor Edwards offered the following order for hearing regarding condominium conversion protections in the City of Boston.
Wonderful. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. This is a refile from last year. As you know, the last time the City of Boston undertook the conversation, it was under the leadership of Councilor Zakem, where we passed the condominium conversion ordinance that lasted for 5 years. In 2019, that ordinance needed to be renewed. We decided after a robust hearing that we needed to renew it for 1 year, as it will come due in this December of this year, in order to have the conversation necessary to look at the ordinance. In the ordinance right now, there are protections for certain classes of individuals, low income, disability, and seniors, assuring that if their units become condos, that they have a 5-year lease extension to ensure that they can stay there. One question to folks is whether those classes or those individual groups should be expanded. The other question is whether the 5-year lease makes sense. To compensate for the lack or not giving a lease, there's also a certain amount of money, I think it's $5,000 that a person can give in order to avoid the extended lease. Does $5,000 really help those who are being displaced nowadays? And the question is whether we should raise that. The other question is what to do when people clear out the building and they can look you in the face and say, yes, we're becoming condos, but there are no tenants here to protect. And that has been a loophole that we have found that allowed a lot of people to clear out buildings and still convert old units into condos without providing any of these protections. So what we want to do is continue the conversation we started last year, and to make sure that when we go to renew this condo ordinance, we are doing it with making it the strongest, most impactful condo conversion ordinance in the City of Boston. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Anyone else looking to speak or add their name? Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, and also the chair. Docket 0389 will be referred to the Committee on Housing and Community Development. Madam Clerk, if you could please read docket 0390.
Docket 0390, Councilors Wu and Janey offer the following order for hearing regarding equity in City of Boston procurement and purchasing.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Wu. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Madam President, and thank you for your partnership on this now over several years. I think the council is well aware of this issue, and I'll just frame it briefly as one of the fastest and most impactful ways that the City of Boston could immediately take steps to align our spending with our policy goals. We know that we could immediately take steps to close the racial wealth divide, to close income inequality gaps, to support wealth building in our neighborhoods if we were to leverage that $664 million plus that we spend of completely discretionary city spending each year. It's for contracts for goods like the paper that we're printing our packets on, to services like cutting the grass in city parks and plowing the snow around city buildings. So we're following up and making sure that we'll have the public conversation on the data and the numbers, which we've been receiving over time. But in all that work, I got a reminder just a few weeks ago that this is still very, very salient. So I just want to share the story of an entrepreneur, a local business owner who reached out to me. He has a local business in the city and said that he saw in the city record notice that there was a certain type of contract being offered that fit his business. The notice also included some other details, how to apply, when the deadline was, and the date of a meeting about this particular bid and contract. The date of the meeting had already passed by the time anyone had received this sort of the publication, and the deadline of the bid had not passed. So he got everything together, filled out the entire application, submitted it, and the response that he got was that while he could have otherwise been qualified, he would not even be considered because he had not made it to that mandatory meeting. And when he asked how he could possibly have known about the mandatory meeting in order to go to it to satisfy the requirements so that his bid could be considered, he was told that there's a private email list that the department maintains. And he was not on the email list, so there's no way he could have known about it, but that next time he could be added for when the contract comes up 3 years from now or however many years down the line. So even in the system today, as much as we are pushing to get the data and the numbers, there are many, many places that we can make it work better to support all of the goals that we're fighting for from every direction. And there are businesses today who have the capacity to be investing in local workers, to be putting money out back into neighborhood economies that we are missing out on supporting because the process is not clear, not accessible, and certainly there's no focus on equity in it right now. So we are going to change all of that. We're going to continue pushing. I know there's been a lot of progress along the way, but still a very, very long way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wu. The chair now recognizes the council president. Councillor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Councillor O'Malley. I also want to thank Councillor Wu for your leadership and your partnership on this very important issue. As we all know, this council passed an ordinance promoting equity in city contracts back in December of 2017, before I got here. Section 4 of that ordinance requires that the Office of Small Business and Development prepare and publicly release quarterly reports on the number, the type, the dollar of contracts with minority-owned, women-owned, and veteran-owned, and Boston-based small businesses. According to the ordinance, these reports are to be published on the city's website and submitted to the mayor as well as the Boston City Council. The council, in my knowledge, has only received 2 reports, I think, in the last 8 quarters since this ordinance was passed. In our hearing last spring that we had, we learned that for fiscal year 18, that less than 1% of the $664 million in city contracts went to local Boston-based businesses or businesses owned by people of color or businesses owned by women. Let me repeat that. Less than 1% of $664 million in city contracts went to local Boston-based businesses or businesses owned by women or businesses owned by people of color. We have to do better, and we must do better. As a city, if we say we value equity, then it's high time that we put our money where our mouth is. The shockingly low numbers and the lack of equity requires urgent action, and the quarterly reports are essential to measuring our progress or lack thereof. These reports are essential. The numbers show the need for accountability and reporting, as the Boston City Council has recognized and required. With the City Council hearing, I look forward to seeing what I hope will be improvements to how the city does its business. It is our responsibility to make sure that this ordinance is being implemented with fidelity, which means timely, accurate reporting, and that our process is much more equitable. I look forward to this hearing and continuing this important conversation with all of my colleagues on the council, as well as the administration, and as well as community partners like BECMA, BG, and Black Market. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam President. The chair now recognizes the at-large counselor from South Boston. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, and through the chair to the makers, just ask that they would consider involving the FinCom in this. As you all recall, at the end of the year, we had a very important hearing where the FinCom was here in front of us describing sort of their role and how they're underutilized, that this body never engages them. I think this might be sort of a test case opportunity to engage the FinCom and have them review this information and provide that type of feedback, whether it's on behalf of this body or on behalf of the residents of the city of Boston. And so they seem to be ready, willing, and able to help us to get this type of information and to turn these numbers around. And so instead of having to reinvent the wheel, let's bring them down and see whether or not this is something that's in their wheelhouse and see if they'll go to work on our behalf and on the public's behalf to bring about some change here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. I see both of the sponsors nodding their head in agreement, so I'm sure that will be incorporated in the hearing. Would any other councilor like to speak on this matter? The chair will recognize the District 4 City Councilor. Councilor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. This is why we need an Inspector General. I'm just going to throw that out there again. But thank you, Councilor Flaherty, for just giving me an opening for that. But I want to thank Councilor Wu and Councilor Janey for their work on this particular issue, for their leadership over the past few years on this particular issue, and their work to highlight not only when we pass an ordinance that we continue to follow up on it, but the details of it in a way that the public understands and that they can play a role, of course, in holding the administration and departments accountable. I also want to thank Lawyers for Civil Rights, BECMA, Amplify Latinx, who have been pushing the city of Boston, but also the state and the Commonwealth to do better with respect to contracts for women and people of color. And despite the fact, and it's sad, despite the fact that the city is majority minority, less than 5% of our contracts are awarded to minority-owned businesses. And last month, in solidarity with advocacy groups who have been organizing around this issue and who organized around the issue leading up to Martin Luther King Day, I, along with some others, called on the administration to get specific. So not just, of course, making sure that the council has the reports, but specifically committing to actual numbers, committing to actual action items so that we can then hold them more accountable. It's not enough just to have the reporting. So what should they do? Specific numeric targets for increasing the percentage of city contracts awarded to minority-owned businesses to 7%, 14%, and 20% of those contracts over the next 3 years. Adopt the pilot program currently being used by Massport. It requires that developers submitting bids for major projects have a minority-owned business partner from the time they submit the bid, instead of pledging to find one after being awarded the contract. These are concrete steps that we could be taking as a city to ensure that folks who want to take advantage of the resources and opportunities available, that they can. Martin Luther King Day came and went without specific commitments on this vital issue from the administration. And as has already been explained, but I want to echo, given the district I represent, this goes much farther than city contracts. It is about jobs, it is about economic opportunity and building wealth in communities that have been shut out of opportunity for generations. In addition to reviewing the report on the progress of the procurement process, I ask that the hearing also include strategies around these specific commitments. We've heard from many folks in the advocate space, as well as residents who want to see the administration adopt them. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Councilor Campbell. Madam Clerk, would you please add the name of Councilor Andrea Campbell as well? The chair now recognizes the district councilor from District 8, Ms. Bach. Councilor Bach.
Thank you. I just wanted to connect this to a matter we already discussed in this meeting. When the Public Facilities Department came to talk about the MSBA grants, one of the things that we discussed in the hearing yesterday, and that Brian McLaughlin at Public Facilities was very open to, is that, one of our challenges with this is, like, we need to think about every place in city expenditures where we can build pipelines. And the interesting thing about our roof, windows, and boilers projects in the public schools is that they're actually a fairly predictable pipeline of similar projects. Like, if your company can get good at doing a roof job on the school, they can do the one the next year and the next year. And so I think thinking about, and the reality, as we know, is that our public agencies are very constrained in the way that they have to bid these projects. And so often one of the things that we've seen is things like requirements around insurance certs and other things get in the way of us diversifying the pool of applicants. And so one of the things that I would advocate for the makers of the hearing to consider and for us to discuss at that moment is sort of what are the ways that we can create more of a pipeline of businesses that are ready to take on some of these routine, regular projects that we know we have coming in the city, because and ones that are substantial in terms of the number of dollars that we and in this case the state end up putting into them. So I would just make that suggestion and say that it's something that we should be looking when we see the different city processes and the different departments, thinking about what are ones that might be ripe for really making progress on this front. So.
Would you like to add your name, Councillor Bach?
I would, yes.
Yes,
thank
please, Madam Clerk, please add the name of Councillor Bach. The chair recognizes the councillor from District 2. Councillor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. And Mr. Vice President, please add my name. I just want to highlight that I want to say thank you to the council president for also including veteran-owned companies as well. This coming week, I'm going to be going to Washington, D.C. for a conference on disabled American veterans, and one of the workshops that they are presenting next week is on veteran-owned companies. Oftentimes, veteran-owned companies are overlooked across our country. A lot of people think that because you might be disabled or you're a veteran, you may not have the tools to run an effective company, but I can tell you it's just the opposite. A lot of our veterans most of our veterans are hardworking, determined, very honest, very professional. So I'd like to continue to work closely with my colleagues, Council President and Council Wu, to make sure that veterans are also included. And I'm glad that was mentioned earlier. And I will report back to the Council on some of the lessons learned that I learned from the upcoming DAV conference in Washington as well. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Madam Clerk, please add the name of Councillor Ed Flynn. Is there any further discussion on docket 390? Seeing none, would any other councillors wish to add their name? Madam Clerk, please add the District 5 councillor. Councillor Royal, please add the District 3 councillor. Councillor Baker, please add the District 9 councillor. Councillor Braden, please add the District 1 councillor. Councillor Edwards, please add the at-large councillor from Dorchester, Councillor Sabi George. Please add the chair's name. And docket 0390 will be referred to the Committee on Post-Audit and Oversight.
Wonderful. Now we will move on to, thank you, Councillor O'Malley. Now we will move on to docket 0391. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0391, Council Flaherty offered the following order for a hearing regarding implementation of Year 13 programming in the Boston Public Schools.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a refile from last council session, and largely because we had a new superintendent and given her an opportunity to get up to speed and to engage before we sort of presented this opportunity. And as you all heard me say before, we live in a global economy, and at the same time we boast of the best colleges, universities in the world. We're home to innovative companies and industries. We have a Boston public school system that has 16,000 high school-age kids, but a lot of them, which are obviously deserving of access to these opportunities that are literally in their backyard, yet despite the improvements of our schools and particularly our high school graduation rates, we often hear about students who are not accessing these opportunities or who are not able to or who struggle to compete for those opportunities. And data has shown that particularly for students that are looking to excel academically as well as to take advantage of professional benefits from a structural opportunity within our school system, an additional 1 year of academic enrichment would pave the way for them. And we all know that we have a pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes. I think some of our colleges and universities would be willing to step up to help support a Year 13 programming for the Boston Public Schools. I'd like to stress that this concept is not an indictment on our current school system. The council regularly acknowledges that our school system is underperforming in some areas, and we should be doing more to help all of our students, namely students with the abilities to not only graduate, but also to make sure that they're college ready and that they're career ready. It's not good enough that we just graduate a kid from the Boston Public Schools. When you look at all that's going on in our city, particularly in my neighborhood along the South Boston waterfront, and all the companies that are coming here, looking forward to calling Boston their home. What a travesty that those jobs are not trickling out throughout all of our neighborhoods. I've spoken to residents and stakeholders that have expressed an interest in an additional year of academic support for students. I've also reached out to our chair. Recently, we've had a meeting as to how do we advance this potential for year 13 within the Boston Public Schools. And so whether it's a student that needs a little extra help with SAT prep, additional support with math skills and subject matter acumen, or would like additional training before heading off to a vocational trade, year 13 could be an additional resource to also close the achievement gap. So as the economy grows and evolves and changes around us, it's important that we're preparing our Boston Public School students for all those changes. So looking forward to a hearing through our council and also a discussion with our mayor and our superintendent, and encourage colleagues to sign on and to help lead a robust discussion as to how we could make a program like this a reality for students. And again, absolute travesty that these companies are moving here. People come from all around the world every year to attend some of the greatest colleges and universities in the world, yet not enough of our kids are gaining access to that opportunity. And the ones that do, sadly, sometimes in their first year, they're home at Thanksgiving and they never go back. Or they finish their first year and they never go back because they struggle with the academic portion of it. So time has come to really take a long, hard look at a year 13 for the Boston Public Schools. And it may not be for everybody, but I know that it will make a huge difference in getting these kids into these great schools, being able to participate and to get these college scholarships that are available to city residents. But more importantly, when they graduate, the sky is the limit for them with respect to being able to matriculate into these to the jobs that are in these great companies. So it's not enough that we get the mailroom covered. It's not enough that we get the loading dock covered. It's not enough that we get to be able to participate in building the buildings. I think it's important that the residents of the city participate in the jobs in those corner offices and the CEOs and the CFOs and the COOs and the general counsels, et cetera. And that all starts with preparing them from our Boston Public Schools onto these great schools. So thank you, Madam President, and look forward to a dialogue.
Thank you so much, Councilor Flaherty. Anyone else looking to speak or add their name? Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Baker, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden. Councilor Campbell, did you want to speak? Okay, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Sarby George, Councilor Flynn, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, and please add the chair. The chair recognizes Councilor Campbell. Councilor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Councilor Flaherty, for reintroducing your hearing order, and I look forward to participating in the conversation. But, you know, as we continue to talk about high schools in particular, and I think you recognize this in your comments, there's a lot of work that we have to do. Although we can boast of having one of the highest graduation rates in the city of Boston now, we know that 2 out of 3 of our high school students do not finish college within 6 years. If you are not in an exam school, we know that 4 out of 6 non-exam high school students literally do not go off to college, do not graduate. So we have a major issue here when it comes to high school redesign to ensure that all of our high schools are serving our students. We also know for non-exam schools, those who have to receive our special ed students, our English language learners, there is a high concentration of those students in non-exam schools in particular, and advocates as well as students, families, parents, teachers, principals have been calling for years, one, for that concentration to not exist, for every high school to share the burden of teaching our students, but more importantly, for the specialists and the human capital, for example, that they need to be able to educate these students. So I think if we're talking about a 13th year, we also, of course, need to be talking about the reality of our high schools, and I think it needs to be folded in, of course, and you've mentioned that. But it also needs to continue to be a part of the conversation, because there is a crisis in many respects with certain high schools not having what they need to ensure that our students are getting adequately taught and the resources they deserve in order to not just go off to college, to fulfill whatever dream they have for themselves. And so I hope to just add that to the conversation and thank also Councilor Flaherty for his work in this area. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Anyone else looking to speak? Wonderful. Docket 0391 will be referred to the Committee on Education. We'll now move on to docket 0392. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0392, Councilor Edwards offers the following resolution honoring Florence L. Johnson of Charlestown for her service to our nation and Gold Star families.
Wonderful. The Chair recognizes Councilor Edwards. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Today I'm beginning the process of hopefully getting a memorial for a woman of Charlestown, a veteran whose name is Florence Johnson, also known as Flo. She enlisted in the Navy in World War II in 1944. Her son was actually killed in Vietnam in 1967, and after his death, Flo dedicated herself to veterans' causes and Gold Star families in particular. She served as the president of the Massachusetts and Rhode Island Gold Star Mothers and was a member of Memorial Hall, a veterans organization in Charlestown, also known as the Abraham Lincoln Post, number 11 GR. She was also the past commander of the American Legion Bunker Hill Post, number 26 of Charlestown, and the Honor Society of Women Legion 20-4. In 2014, she joined her son in heaven. This resolution starts the process to allow her to permanently join her son and place a memory in her name on her son's Hero Square sign, under it actually, in Charlestown. This is requested by the members of the Memorial Hall and Veteran Services. So part of that process, and I wanted to thank Commissioner Robert Santiago, Darrell Miller of the Veterans Office, and also Joseph Fonte of Charlestown. They asked that we as a council move this resolution forward to start that process so that she now will be permanently placed with her son under the Hero Square sign in Charlestown. It's a small token of appreciation for Flo Johnson, for everything she did for veterans and Gold Star families throughout her life. It's especially important that we recognize all of our veterans, especially the women who joined in 1944, and I have to note that that must have been a difficult time for her and the amount of glass ceilings that she bust through for even women like my mother who joined in 1973 in Vietnam. So I'm here today to ask my colleagues to sign on to this resolution to make sure that Flo can join her son permanently, her son Edward, on the Hero Square pole in Charlestown. Thank you.
Thank you.
I move to pass, suspend the rules and pass.
Thank you. Anyone else looking to speak or add their name? Madam Clerk, would you like to speak, Councilor Flynn? So, Councilor Flynn, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and please add my name. I just want to say thank you to Councilor Edwards for staying on top of this. This is an incredible opportunity for Flo and for her family to be recognized in such a meaningful way. So I want to say thank you to Councilor Edwards and the veterans of Charlestown, military families of Charlestown, that have always been there for our country. And we're so proud of the veterans that we have in Charlestown for their dedication and sacrifice to our country. And I think Councilor Edwards also said it perfectly as well, that our women veterans in our country often get overlooked. They don't get the services at the VA Medical Center. They don't get, they actually they don't even consider themselves at times veterans, so they're reluctant to go in to the VA to apply for VA services that they've earned. So it's something that myself and Councilor Edwards will continue to work on, making sure that our women veterans are heard and get the services that they need and that they've earned. Again, I want to say thank you to Councilor Edwards. She's from a military family. Her mother served in the U.S. Air Force, and looking forward to continuing to work with you, Councilor Edwards. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. The Chair recognizes Councilor O'Malley. Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to thank the Maker, my dear colleague and friend, the District 1 City Councilor, and just very briefly share a little story. 15 years ago, I had a convertible, and I also had a mutual friend with Flo, and was therefore dragooned into driving her the entire length of the Charlestown parade, Bunker Hill Day Parade. and it was one of the great honors, that I've been lucky enough to experience. When I say that Flo knew everybody, she knew everybody, and everybody loved her. And her reverence for the military, her love for her community, for her neighborhood was just simply remarkable. Heartbroken when I heard she had passed several years ago, and I think this is such an incredible tribute. So thank you, Counselor, for doing this, and I proudly add my name. Look forward to seeing that sign installed under her son's name. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty, you have the
Thank you,
floor.
Madam President. I'd be remiss also if I didn't give a shout out to Flo Jo, as we called her, in an awesome tribute to a wonderful person who would always seek me out at the Bunker Hill breakfast to guarantee her a ride to the start of the parade so she could jump into that convertible. But also, as a citywide city council, she showed up at all the parades, and she was always in the Gold Star Mother section. And so, to Councilor O'Malley's point, she knew everyone across the city. People were very fond of her, but that's just a wonderful, wonderful woman that will be memorialized for eternity on that hero square. So happy to add my name, and thanks to the lead sponsor for remembering a great and wonderful woman from Charlestown, Flo Jo.
Thank you so much. Anyone else looking to speak? Add their name. Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Baker, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Asabi George. You already have Councilors Flaherty and Flynn and O'Malley. Please also add Councilor Wu, and please add the chair. Councilor Edwards seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 0392. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0392 has been adopted. There are no personnel orders today, so we will move on to late files. And I am informed by the clerk that there is one late file matter. In the absence of objection, it will be added to the agenda. Hearing no objection, we will add the late file. Just for clarity, if anyone's wondering, it is a letter from our colleague explaining her absence from this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone wishing to remove a matter from the green sheets? Oh, please, read the docket.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
From the office of Julia Mejia, City Councilor at Large. Dear Madam Clerk, I am writing to inform you of my absence during today's City Council meeting. Due to an unforeseen family circumstance, I will not be able to attend. As such, I am asking that my submissions, docket numbers 0378 through 0388, be pulled so that I may file them at a later date when I am able to speak on them to my fullest ability. I appreciate your understanding and that of the rest of the City Council. Sincerely, Julia Mejia, Boston City Councilor at Large.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on to green sheets. Anyone looking to remove an item from the green sheets? Okay, wonderful. I've been informed that there is, from the clerk, that there's one addition to the consent agenda. Seeing and hearing no objections, the matter will be added to the consent agenda. Wonderful. The chair now moves for adoption of the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The consent agenda is adopted. Anyone looking to make an announcement? Moving on to announcements. Councilor Baker. The chair recognizes Councilor Baker. You now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Request permission to make a statement. Thank you. I actually have two statements. So I want to just mention to everybody that my wife is away for 3 weeks now. And the reason why I say that is because she's actually in Rwanda. She's at the Ubuntu Women's Center for Peace in Kigali. She's there to train mental health workers in trauma recovery with her Timbo Collective that we met last year. If anybody's familiar with the genocide in Rwanda, nearly 1 million people were killed in 3 months in Rwanda, and the weapon of choice was the machete. And another thing that happened in Rwanda, they used rape as a weapon also, widespread rape to steal the souls of the people that were left alive. So I just need to recognize my wife to be able to go over there and contribute to the healing in Rwanda. It's really, really special what she's doing. I hope she comes back. So that being said, say a prayer for her and the people that she's with, so they can continue to do this good work. And the second statement I have is, with a heavy heart, I have to mention that my chief of staff, who's been with me since day one, who knocking doors during the campaign, I don't know if she's here, she's actually not even here, but a big loss for me. It's like my right arm is leaving me. Amy Frigiletti is my chief of staff. She's been there with me from day one. And as you all know, it's the people that surround you that make you effective in your office. And Amy's going on to bigger and brighter prospects. We love her, we care for her, and we wish her the best. So if you see Amy, wish her best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The chair now recognizes Councilor Bach. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. 2 items. One is just wanted to remind folks who are watching at home that today is the deadline for registering to vote. If you want to vote in the presidential primary in Massachusetts on March 3rd, there will also be early voting in advance of that, which be in case people can't vote on the 3rd. But if you want to vote in the presidential primary, you need to register by the end of the day today. So just wanted to put that reminder out there. And the second thing was, this is something, it's sort of a partnership between my district and Councilor Flynn's district. The Museum of African American History, which is in Councilor Flynn's district, a block outside of mine in Beacon Hill. The Red Sox Foundation has partnered with them to make it free starting Friday this week all the way through Sunday, the 23rd of February, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So just wanted to remind folks all over the city that for the entire duration of school vacation week, and actually starting this Friday, that amazing resource in our city will be free and open to the public. So.
Thank you, Councilor Bach. The chair recognizes Councilor O'Malley. Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask for unanimous consent to make a brief statement. Thank you. One of the people of whom we will be closing in memory today is Robert Beale, and I just wanted to take an opportunity to mention Mr. Beale, who we all knew, and he knew us. He's had been dealing with some health issues the last several years, so some of the newer colleagues may not have had the opportunity, but this is a man who loved this body. And the clerk and I were talking earlier, his 70th and 75th birthday parties, every counselor had to be there. We were glad to be there, but we had to be there because we would hear it if we didn't. And he's one of those people, I'm sure you know the name, he's done a lot in real estate, but his commitment to charities throughout Boston are just remarkable. I mean, the United Way, Combined Jewish Philanthropies. I am particularly grateful for his leadership at the MSPCA and Angel Memorial. And even he would give, I'm sure collectively, millions upon millions of dollars to these great charities. But he was also incredibly kind. And at MSPCA, they now have a grieving room where a family can go, or an individual can go, or a child can go when they have to put a pet down. And that was Robert's idea. So he's happy to give money for programming and research and everything else, but it was that little thing that he would add to, which was just the nature of the man. He also was the opposite of trying to get recognition for any of these things. He would give and give and give, and it was often under the agreement that it would be anonymous. So, you know, we have all had the great honor of going to these events where you'll see these giant donations anonymous. Chances are Robert Beale was often one of those. He was a great guy. What he's done for this cityscape, but, you know, Lovejoy Wharf or Kenmore Square or Congress Square, the West End, he's really just left an indelible mark on this city, and he loved this city, but he really particularly loved the city council. He got to know all of us. His 4th of July parties were legendary. We'd all have to go through, and best views outside of the Esplanade. So just wanted to mention him and thank Mr. Beale for his incredible service to our city. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor O'Malley. The chair now recognizes Councilor Wu. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Request unanimous consent to make a brief statement. So on behalf of Councilor Flynn and myself, I just wanted to invite everyone. We're planning a little get-together in Chinatown this Saturday. As Councilor Flynn had said very eloquently last meeting, the coronavirus epidemic globally has injected a lot of fear and anxiety all across the world, but frankly hasn't injected a level of latent or overt discrimination as well. I'm hearing often from parents of kids who are hearing from comments from their classmates about, who brought it here and this and that, and folks who on the subway, because they're Asian American, are experiencing people acting differently and kind of keeping more space. And so as this epidemic goes forward, I think our job, and certainly Councilor Flynn has been a leader in making sure we're following the science, we're following the public health officials, making sure people know that the risk of coronavirus in Boston is less than the risk of catching the flu. And certainly we all need to be as prepared as we possibly can, but also to know that because of that, and because it has been uniquely sort of associated with a particular race of people, that there are impacts that have extended beyond that. So one thing we're trying to do is support our small businesses in Chinatown. They've been hit really hard. Lunar New Year season is usually the busiest time of year for all the restaurants, and you go and you see business after business, there are no lines, it's empty, and folks are really being hit hard. So on Saturday from 10 to 12, we are having a little dim sum brunch at China Pearl. I'll send out the note to everyone, and I think a few, Anissa and Kenzie, others might be able to join as well. Our colleague Nina Liang, Quincy City Council President, will be joining us, as well as the National Association of Asian American Professionals, hopefully a little group from there. So we hope to see you, just support the local businesses and make sure people know that Chinatown's bustling, we welcome you there, and we want to make sure Lunar New Year season is just as successful this year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor Wu. The chair now recognizes Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you to Councilor Wu for helping organize this important event on Saturday. Madam President, last Friday we had a meeting at the Josiah Quincy School, a public health meeting on the coronavirus, and Chief Martinez was there, Chief Hooley was there, and we provided accurate medical information to residents of Chinatown on this disease. One thing, and it went over very well. There were a lot of rumors that were taking place in the room prior to the meeting, but I think Chief Martinez, Chief Hooley, myself, and others were able to answer them and provide accurate medical information. As Councilor Wu mentioned, there was one woman, a Boston Latin student, an Asian woman, and she was talking about going on the train, and when she walked on the train, everybody left the train or went to the other side of the train because they associated her with this coronavirus. So there is a lot of anti-Chinese sentiment here in the city and across the country, unfortunately. But it's up to us to continue advocating, making sure that everybody is treated with respect and dignity, regardless of what your ethnic background is. And I also want to highlight one other issue. I've been talking for several years now on the importance of language access. And what I was really struck by when I came into this meeting on Friday night, working with Chief Martinez and Chief Hooley as well, but we had translators in there that were communicating with people in Mandarin, they were communicating with people in Cantonese. We had the documents, the public health documents in Chinese. So the more we talk about language access as a body, the more effective we become across the city, making sure every person's voice is heard in the city, regardless if they speak English or another language. So I just want to say thank you to the body and to the administration as well for taking language access very seriously. Certainly there's more work we can do on language access, but it was great to see us communicating in Cantonese and Mandarin on Friday night. So I want to thank the body, and I want to thank the administration for their work on this public health issue. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Councilor Flynn. Anyone else looking to make an announcement? Wonderful. So as folks know, we opened up last week's council meeting with Page Academy and the African Drumming Circle as we opened up Black History Month. And we obviously know that we make Black history every single day. It's not limited to 28 days, or in this case, 29 days. But I did want to make mention that this body does celebrate Black History Month with a special event. And that event will be held at our next council, well, after our next council meeting. We will be celebrating workers Black workers in the labor movement. That is our theme this year throughout the city of Boston. This is an open event. It is free to the public. We encourage certainly all of our colleagues to participate. It's right after our meeting, but we also invite and encourage the public to attend. It'll be a wonderful celebration honoring those who are on the front lines every single day, fighting for the issues that we care about on this body. So that celebration will take place on Wednesday, February 26th at 2:30 p.m. in the Ionella Chamber right here after our council meeting. Now I would like to ask all guests and members to rise. We will adjourn today's meeting in the memory of the following individuals: from Councilor Baker, Councilor Flaherty, and Councilor Flynn, Harry Ullman; for Councilor Braden, James Gerard Jacobs; for Councilor Flaherty and Councilor Flynn, John Jack Wishick, Ann Ferber Clancy, and Alice Driscoll Norton; and for the entire council, Robert Beal. A moment of silence. The chair moves that when the council adjourns today, it does so in the memory of the aforementioned individuals, and we are scheduled to meet again on Wednesday, February 6th at 12 noon in the Ionella Chamber here at City Hall. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Aye. The ayes have it. The council is now adjourned. Thank you.